Good evening, everybody. It is 7 o'clock. Carl and I, as always, are ready to rock. It's the Awkward Turkey podcast. It is the beginning of July. Is it? No, yep. It's the end of July because this episode is shot completely out of sync to help with somebody's
it's the end of July
promotional things. Shall I leave that in or should we go again?
Yeah.
Leave it in. They can see
honest,
the
bro.
inside.
It's honest, bro. Yeah.
They can
the way
see
the machine
how it
works.
So it's Awkward Turkey podcast. It's the end of July. What an amazing month in July we've had. Obviously, we haven't filmed those bits yet.
We haven't done any of it yet.
But very excited about those things.
Presuming like every other month, it was bloody amazing.
Let's not talk about what we haven't filmed and what people have already seen. It's really weird, that is.
Yeah,
isn't it? Because when we get to the end of the month, everybody will have seen it and we haven't even filmed it yet. Is that kind of like The Matrix?
I've never seen it.
Yeah, basically, there's a red pill or a blue pill. Always take the red. Blue. Yeah.
I don't know. Always go for the blue, innit? Never take the red. Why would you take a red pill? It's like going, there's a red button and a blue button. Which are you going to press? Red! I don't know if
it's take the blue pill.
Yeah.
You wake up and none of it happens, I think, in The Matrix. You take the red pill and I think there's some analogy about a rabbit hole, which I always thought was a euphemism. And then I watched all three films. Turns out it's not a euphemism. It is just...
Also, how cool is Keanu Reeves? Like, I've never seen it, but I know he's in it. And he's super cool, isn't he?
How have you not seen The Matrix?
I live under a rock, don't I?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. He's really cool. And I don't know if this is true. And it's one of those sort of Hollywood myths that you really hope is true. But the way it works with like big films or franchises like that, where there's, I don't know, they know there's going to be a sequel or they know there's going to be three. They ask people at the beginning, a bit like if you get cast in a commercial, do you want a buyout? So do you want a big lump sum of money in regards to The Matrix or the commercial, or do you want a percentage of it like when it goes out on telly? So if you do an advert, you can take $5,000 or you can have 20 quid every time it's on telly. Now, the 20 quid doesn't sound a lot, but it adds up and you might end up making, I don't know, £100,000.
Yeah.
Now with The Matrix, the myth is, and I don't know if it is a myth. I think the news did report it. He didn't take the big lump sum. He took I think shares. He had something like 5% of the merchandise, just the merchandise. And at the end of the third film, he bought everyone in the cast and the crew. Think about how many people are involved in that film. He bought them all a Harley Davidson.
Wow.
Yeah.
By the end of the third film, he bought them all an envelope, which when they opened it, it said, "Fucking sucker."
I mean, I know what I'd prefer.
Postcard from his private island in Maui.
He did say at one point, "I've got more money than God." He never said that. Never said that. But
God bless Keanu Reeves.
If that's true, that's brilliant. And
what, that he's got more money than God?
No, that he bought everyone a Harley Davidson. He bought everyone a Harley Davidson. I like Keanu Reeves because he kind of lives that life. He still gets the tube and he gives all his money away to charity. And he's just like, he is.
Because he got shares in The Matrix, bro.
Yeah.
If I had shares in The Matrix, charity would be all right. I'd give to them as well.
That is the film that you want to have shares in. You need to watch it. You do need to watch it. You do.
Really? It's old now, isn't it?
It is, but you said to me about watching Star Wars or something like that, or Star Trek. I don't know.
Yeah, but Star Wars is like a legendary film. The Matrix is not.
You say legendary. I say
legendary.
Schmedgendary. I'm not watching it. You're not watching Matrix.
Got a new haircut.
Yeah, I have. I've had it all. Well, I've had it all chopped off.
About the past 4 weeks, but.
Oh, shit, yeah.
But for me, this is the first time really seeing it.
Long story short, and this will now be probably about 12. My hair will be long by the time this goes back out again. I did a gig, and it was amazing to go back and do a gig. This is, I don't know, end of May, something like that. And then I did another one, and I felt really good about it. And I thought, it's really nice to be back on stage. And I got back to my house and I made myself a little bit of dinner. And then I saw some pictures of it pop up on social media. And it's so hot at the moment that just like setting up and sound checking, you're sweating.
Yeah.
And I just saw some pictures of it and I thought, I can't really go out looking like that. It was just sort of sweaty and scraped back into a man bun at the back. It just didn't look good. So I thought,
snip.
Very visuals. Yeah, I was making scissors with my fingers.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'll cover that one for you. Snap.
I had a go and I think...
cut yourself?
Sorry?
Did you cut it yourself?
No, of course I didn't cut it myself.
Oh, when you said I had to go?
No, I mean, I had a go at having long hair. I really wanted to persevere with it and get it super duper long. And I think if I didn't do the job I did in the height of summer, I might have had a better shout at carrying it on, but it just looked messy. It's all right when you're doing the podcast and you're sitting still. It's not so all right when you're leaping up and down singing satellites.
Yeah, fair enough.
Do you know what I mean? I can't see your hair, but you've got a little.
I've got a beanie on because I haven't done my hair.
It's also the height of summer, and you're in a thick green woolen hat, looking like one of the South Park cast.
I got out the shower and then I thought I could either do my hair for the podcast or and I chose the good option.
Excellent. That is, if it hadn't been for all the research that you told me you'd done before the show, I'd go, Carl, you're slacking, but you're definitely not slacking. Research. I'm going to start calling.
I did do some work for this episode. I am in shorts, though, ladies and gentlemen. Sexy legs.
German for me too is ich auch. I am also in shorts.
Oh, check it out. Got to be like me, innit? So in Swansea, they've just made a brand new arena, and the councillor who's like organized the arena and organized it's like a multi-million-pound arena. It only holds 4,000, I want to say, but he wants Queen to open it, to be the first act. He wants Queen
at the new arena in Swansea.
Yeah,
with Adam Lambert.
Queen, yeah.
Well,
it's going to be it's going to be a bad gig if there's no singer. Just Queen. So you no one take the vocal. No,
it's just the music. That's quite a big ask.
Yeah, I know. It's almost how would you say this? Fucking mental.
We've built this. It's almost like
ask, but
it's almost like me going. It's almost like me going down the road from where I live in Stafford. They've just built themselves a new community centre, right? I mean, this thing is top of the range. And it's got a play area outside. It's got sort of sports halls, and they're thinking of doing live music there as well. There's going to be DJs. There's going to be tombolas. There's going to be gymkhanas for the horses. And the president of the committee has asked if we can book Janet Jackson for it.
Yeah,
no, she fucking won't come.
Yeah, it's a lot like that. I'm not going to lie.
Anyway, back onto today's episode. We've talked about the Overtones. Talked about our guest is from the Overtones. I don't think we've actually said his name or who it is that we've got yet.
Well, shall we just get him on and I'll give it the big one? I'll give him a big introduction and we'll do it that way.
I mean, it sounds great. Let's do that.
All right.
We don't have a guest jingle anymore. What I do is I just play a little sort of transition into. You've seen him before. It's really cool. It looks like this.
All right, he's 1/4 of my favorite vocal harmony group, the Overtones. He's Welsh, and he also happens to be a good friend. Ladies and gents, please welcome the multi-talented Jay Jing.
Hey, thank you, Carl. That was wonderful. That was lovely.
The best intro I've ever given anyone, to be honest. You guys say, are you going or what? Are we good to go? Or...
Level with you, Jay. It's the only intro he's ever written. 9 times out of 10, he looks at me with fear in his eyes and goes, "Have you been on Wikipedia? Have you been on Wikipedia? I hope you've been on Wikipedia."
Well,
hey, well, it's great to be on with the Bagel Boys.
Yeah.
Hey,
wow.
Bagel Boys
with cream cheese.
That is a reference I did not expect. Nobody ever says that.
Are you having a laugh? Hey, come on, boys. Hey, gotta do your research, isn't you? Gotta be on your research.
Oh, man.
Oh, my God. How you doing, Jay? You good?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. Yeah, it's been a pretty epic time, to be honest with you, with everything that's going on with the Overtones, and in the lead up to the album release, and radio.
You got a successful radio show as well.
Yeah, so I sort of I've got a show on BFBS Radio, which is the British Forces Broadcasting Service, and I got involved about 6 months after the X Factor, to be honest, in 2014. When I went through all that process, I was kind of like, what can I do, to sort of keep this music thing going, but also be creative, because I mean, we'll probably get into it, but I loved the X Factor situation, but I kind of felt, and I don't know if you'll feel like this, Carl, at all, but or Tom, but when you try and find your light for so long, you play every toilet in the land, and you're just trying to find that spotlight. And when you get in front of that spotlight, albeit in those circumstances, on a reality TV show like that with 13 million people watching, you kind of figure out that maybe that's not the spotlight that you maybe wanted, the celebrity spotlight. And I'd probably suggest that I'm a far better, I'm far better in the studio and being on stage than I am being any form of celebrity, because that's just not my vibe, to be honest. I don't seek for that. So it's a weird one, really. But radio, I found, was a really good way for me to do that, stay creative, because it's a lot like writing music. In music, you write songs about things that happen in your life, observations, and you do exactly the same thing on radio. Do you know what I mean? You figure out what's going on.
The one thing I find about radio, because obviously my missus does a breakfast show, and the one thing people don't realize is the amount of hard work and hours that go into the prep of the show. Every time you do a show, it's mental.
It is nuts, because we have
to do the 4
now.
hours show or whatever, 3 hours, whatever the show may be, and then you come home and you have to prep for tomorrow or for whenever. It's.
But I find myself walking down the street. If anything happens now in my life that's like, and again, that it doesn't have to be a particularly big thing after the last 15 months, because anything that, like a meal, is an event. But like anything that happens now, I'm writing it down. I get the notes out of my phone, I'm writing it down. I'm like, can we talk about this? Can this be a thing? So that sort of constant search for making a show, content heavy is really tricky, especially when nobody's doing anything. Like we did about 6 months of podcasting in the height of the pandemic, where everyone we had on, we were like, what have you been up to? And they've gone, everyone just goes, absolutely f***ing nothing. We've done nothing. You know what I mean? And it's, how do you keep, I don't know, current and fresh when everyone in the whole world hasn't done anything?
And it's kind of your job as a radio presenter as well to pick people up, right? To pick spirits up and keep people
just to be relevant and talk about things that are going on, but equally do it in a positive, uplifting way, right? Which equally is work, but also it's good work, because again, like you boys have been doing the podcast throughout this pandemic, but in a time where outside your windows and doors, there's a battle going on, and it's not a very nice battle, and there's lots of people that aren't having a great time. You're trying to figure out ways to, again, bring positivity, and what that does is actually create focus towards you not getting too carried away with what's going out there, because you're constantly looking for things to keep people moving. And like with yourself, it's keeping you moving. So it's forced positivity as well, because you're in that scenario where there's been weeks, and I'm sure you've had it as well. There's been months, in fact, where Carl and I have turned up to record or to do something, and neither of us have wanted to. You know what I mean? It's the last gig that you had has been rescheduled for the 15th time, and the tour that you were supposed to do is now happening, if it ever happens there. And you turn up and you go, right, now we've got to try and sort of find something from somewhere that's uplifting or that's happy. And I think that's not necessarily good for you at the time, but in the long run, I think it's pretty good for your character building, I think, because you learn to sort of put on that face that you need to It totally is. It drags you out the dirt. It drags you out the dirt, or the potential dirt that you can get into. And, you know, it's weird because I certainly didn't want to come on here and start talking about the X Factor. But because we're talking about this type of situation, you know, obviously it's a long time ago now, but I felt coming off of a show like that. I mean, I had a long career, you know, signed to a major and working with some pretty incredible people before that point. And so I'd experienced a large amount of the industry, and then to go on that show and then experience that, I found
What's
that
that like going
Just
from...
Carl, just before, because I from the outside, from somebody who wouldn't understand the way that it works, I say somebody who's listening who doesn't grasp it, because you said you'd had success before. Can I ask, at what point did you go, having an understanding of the industry and having a metaphorical foot in the door, with having the success before, what made you go, I'm gonna go and do the X Factor? What was the natural thought process that went from where you were to that? Because surely a lot of people would think, if you've got that little bit of success, do you need to do the X Factor?
Yeah, totally. And it's a great question, mate, because, you know, I sort of left, I left the military. I joined the military age 16. I fell into music completely by accident, if I'm being brutally honest. You know, we got, it was an all day session right before New Year's Eve. We talked about New Year's resolutions. I was up. I ended up seeing a guitar across the road in this guitar shop, and I was like, I'm going to buy that, learn it. You know, that's going to be my New Year's resolution. And it was like, yeah, as if you will, Jay. Yeah, of course you will, Taff. And it was only because they said I wouldn't that I walked across the road, you know, half cocked, bought this guitar, took it around the pubs with me, pretending I was on the way to a gig, you know, trying to chat up loads of women and on the pull and stuff. And then, you know, the next morning I woke up absolutely banging hangover, and Lamar the guitar, I named him, was literally in my bed. And for the next 3 months, I didn't touch it. You know,
that was amazing, because I genuinely thought you were on about the singer then for a minute.
So did I.
Lamar was in my bed.
My bed. I was like, that's so weird, isn't it?
Hang on a minute.
I mean,
he's gone out. He's
been
to
in
poor
all
girls,
our beds, but that's
come
so
back.
weird.
He's come back with Fame Academy's Lamar.
What a result! Yeah. So, you know, like 3 months, I had no intention of doing it, and I got injured playing for the Navy in the build-up to the services. My best mate had been drafted out to Iraq. It was going so well for me at the point in my career, and you know, I sort of, I didn't really know how to deal with it. And of course, the best way, you know, in the military, you're taught to suppress your emotions in order to carry out what you've got to do. And so that was my first thing that I did, was go, okay, guitar, focus. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to learn that. And in many ways, when I look back, it was a kind of therapy, but I fell hard. I fell really hard into music and learning it, and actually trying to teach myself guitar through Ultimate Guitar, you know, which was back in the day, and teaching myself the easiest songs, the songs that had no, you know, like 3 chords and stuff like that, which happened to be songs like Tracy Chapman and Fast Car, which, you know, by all accounts are, you know, some of the best songs ever written.
One of the greatest songs ever written. Yes. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you then start to, you know, you can't play, you know, you can't move your fingers quick enough. So then what I found naturally was learning the melodies and the lyrics of the song, which I'd never really done before or sang, you know, out like that before, in order to keep myself in rhythm. And then I was like, oh, hang on a minute, like I'm singing and I'm enjoying it and I'm expressing other people's emotions, but actually what I'm doing is expressing my emotions through music, and it's like a therapy. So I felt hard into it, and then ended up, you know, about 9 months later, my mate came back and at his welcome home party, he was like, I had a couple of mates who played, and he was like, go on, Jay, like, you got to do it. Because he came back and he was like, what the f is going on? There's guitar. Like, what you know, what's going on? I was like, yeah, I've started playing. I started learning it. It was like, get out of it. No way. Because it was kind of the opposite to what you'd really do in the military, like singing and parping about with the guitar, you know. So, and then I fell hard into it. And then sort of about 3 years later, then I sort of find myself, you know, gigging in London, and then, you know, eventually getting signed by Decca. And then I find myself in a situation taking a sabbatical. being part of the Navy role model scheme, which is kind
Wow, so you were still in the Navy while you were signed.
I was going to say,
Jeez,
at what point did music overtake the career in the services?
There was this real moment where actually I was put in. I was in that moment where I kind of knew that I wanted to go to the next level, and I was actually confident about trying to be spotted and figure out how I get forward and get to that point, because it's like anything, boys, you know, you can go down. There's 5 million of me. There's 5 million of you doing exactly the same thing. Sounds great, great singers, great personality, got the look, got everything. But you just need to have that thing that stands out. And I figured that out nice and early, you know, in the pub, playing in front of 10 people, and then realizing that actually, you know, 6 of those people didn't give a flying, you know, what I was singing, who I was, or what I was doing. And the other 4 were like, wow, you've got an amazing voice. I was like, how can I get those other 6 to take notice and listen? And for me, it was kind of like, you know, wow, okay, I just need to get their attention. And I ended up writing, you know, a couple of tunes and doing a couple of demos. And I put it on this thing called the Indie Store back then. And just by the way that the algorithm worked back then, kind of, I released this song and it ended up going to like number 2. And funny old thing, I think like Lamar and David Schnedden were actually in the same kind of charts, releasing music at the same time.
This is actual Lamar now.
Yeah. This is Lamar the guitar.
Not Lamar the guitar. Cool.
Not in my bed. And so, you know, I went to number 2 in the charts. I stuck it. I sold it for like 90p or 99p or something like that. And I went to number 2, and it was purely, I must have sold, God, like, you know, 60, 70 copies. Do you know what I mean? Told my mates about it. Obviously, my network and my community around, oh, Jay's got, you know, we've got to go and get it. And then because of that, I went to number 2. And then what I was like, oh, you know, I've gone to number 2 in the Indie Store charts. And then everyone, you know, by pure naivety was kind of like, oh, wow, Jay's number 2 in the official charts. This is amazing.
Yeah,
We've got to go and get it. And then I found this thing that happens, which is basically sometimes that good positivity, that spread just happens without even people listening or buying. And then people start to buy. So I went from that, you know, selling like 80 copies to then all of a sudden like 300 and 400 and then going to number 1. And then I ended up staying number 1 for, you know, like 3 weeks. And then, you know, people were taking notice, people were listening, you know, the 10 people in the pub that was, you know, I was playing to then were kind of like 30, 40 people. And actually, instead of the majority not listening, everybody was listening because they wanted to hear what was going on. And the Indie Store was completely irrelevant to the official charts. I had absolutely no, you know, real credibility in that sense. But actually, I was building my own hype. If that makes any sense?
Yeah.
And I did something which I can be quite honest with, because it shows how fickle the industry is and how those types of things work and what you kind of need to do sometimes. Is I'd been serving in the military for 10 years, so I'd actually got a bonus, right? So I decided to invest £200 of my own money back then. This was like 14 years ago, by the way, boys, in buying my own song. So you got to think, I was making 99p, of which I think they were taking 10% commission. So what I did was, you know, I bought my own song, of which I had the majority of the money back, 90% of it back. And I ended up staying in the at number 1 in this online store for about 2 months. And actually what ended up happening was then the Sun newspaper picking it up, Company Magazine, you know, all of these different people that you were trying to reach to. As in this situation, you've not got a platform. How do you do it even nowadays? How do you get notice? I'm a lad from Saundersfoot in Pembrokeshire, right? No one in my area, no one within 2 hours of me has probably been signed by a major record label. How do you find that light? How do you get to those places? A lot of it is luck, but you make your own luck. And you've got to try and find a way of standing out.
What you said, which was super duper interesting, was is how you make yourself different in some way, because you are right, it exists.
Yeah.
You know, there are 1,000 of every single person. So what do you do to make yourself a little bit different? I mean, I don't know if I can ask you what you decided to do at that point in that pub when you were like, right, how do I turn these other 6 people into, you know, convert them? Is that the secret? But
The truth is you never know, because the formula for every single person is different. It's completely different. And so, for me, from my awareness and that, what I picked up as kind of, my situational awareness was the fact that certain people weren't listening. It's not because they didn't want to listen. It's just because every single person has got a million other things ahead of addressing what someone else's problems are, or addressing what someone else wants you to do. And so I figured that out, and so it was a bit of a moment for me to go, okay, cool. People were already taking notice. What I did was kind of just try and keep it in that moment for a little bit longer to try and elevate. And one other thing that I figured out was, a lot of people, I sounded nothing like James Blunt, but James Blunt had just released You're Beautiful, and was huge, was becoming a global star, and he was previously in the army. So, there you go, this Navy guy who's kind of, all of a sudden people are talking about, they're going, oh, so you're a bit like James, you're just like James Blunt then, really, because he's in the army. And I'm like, I sound like him, isn't it? So then what I ended up doing was going to people, what you're doing. I was like, oh, I'm kind of a bit like Blunt in a way, because he's in the army, but I'm in the Navy, but I sound nothing like him. Because then instead of going, oh yeah, Jay's just like that guy, he sounds just like it, they go, oh, he's, what's the music like? So they asked me what the music like, instead of referencing all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a weird one. You get rid of those kind of stigmas or those little things to put yourself in the light straight away. And and so because I was getting all of this, then I suppose attention, and I'm all about the military. Do you know what I mean? I sort of grew up, I joined when I was 16. That's all I wanted to do, was be in the Navy and be a physical training instructor, teach sport and coach sport, play sport. That's all I was ever wanted to do. So in the space of those 3 years where my path had radically changed, and purely because I got injured, I would never have got into music if that didn't happen. So, you can talk about whatever you want, things happen for a reason, but in my life, that's taken me off on a very different path, and it was welcomed. Yeah. So, when I'm there and I'm doing that, I'm kind of like, oh, wow, okay, cool. And so I was really, happy to talk about how the military had really made a positive impact on my life. And so they were like, oh, wow. And so they ended up putting me on this thing called the Navy Role Model Scheme. And because I was quite adamant that I kind of wanted to pursue music at that point, the only other people who were on this scheme were like people like, Pete Reed, who had won like Olympic gold medals rowing. There was like just sports people. So I was like the first person from a music perspective to ever go on that, where I was attached to the military, but I was given a sabbatical to pursue music, but I was still attached to speak positively and do my thing. So, and that gave me a real space. They gave me a year out. And then within that year, I ended up getting offers from, several different record labels, one of which actually Psycho at the time, because they were looking to sign, a credible artist outside of reality TV shows. And I ended up signing to Decca because, legendary record label.
Yeah, of course.
I was going to be a priority artist there. So I ended up signing there. And, what went on is they signed Labyrinth. Which happened again a couple of years later, or like a year later. So, I had that situation with Decca again, going through, you go up the levels, working with different songwriters, focusing on your career, homing down, released a record. Things weren't quite feeling right, but I was finding my light with Decca. But they weren't doing certain things that I felt that they needed to do. And I was able to sort of release the record, but then walk away from Decca on kind of my terms with some masters back, which was really great.
Wow, that's big talk.
Yeah, it was. And I won't get into why and how, but I was able to, and it was good. And I had made some really great contacts. I'd recorded the album out in New York, and with some incredible players, the likes of the Roots crew. I was obsessed with this album called Wake Up with John Legend and the Roots, which was kind of like all about live, all about recording in an old school way, not sticking all of this production, like computers and all that sort of stuff. It's about getting an awesome band in the same studio, rehearsing in like one day, and then going, cool, like record, tape, record, let's go. And doing it in a vibey way. And John Legend and the Roots did that with this album called Wake Up, which went on to win like 3 Grammys. And at the time my A&R was like, yeah, but what's it done? You know, what's it done? It's not very good. It hasn't had any success. I'm like, it's just won 3 Grammys. But, you know, which is, again, so that, you know, I ended up meeting loads of different people, James Poyser, who, you know, is just some incredible people. And then fortunately, they said some amazing things about the experience in working with me. And then across the pond, word started to spread. And then all of a sudden I find myself in the studio with Booker T, who, you know, one of the biggest legends, you know, from Stax, written with the likes of, you know, Al Green, just Otis Redding, you know, the guy wrote Green Onions. So that's Booker T for people who might not know who I'm talking about. And, you know, again, I wrote 3 songs with him and a guy called Malay, who was producing this record for Frank Ocean at the time, Channel Orange. And then he introduced me to John Legend. So I ended up, you know, doing a song with him, and he was playing piano. He ended up being on the record. And then from that, things started to build momentum. Do you know what I mean? You start to work up the ladder, and, you know, good people start to talk about you, and you start doing that. So when I left Decca, I then ended up featuring on Booker's return to Stax, which is a big thing. You know, he had like people like Mayor Hawthorne, Anthony Hamilton on the record, you know, like Estelle, you know, and then me, do you know what I mean? And I ended up flying out to America and performing at the El Rey Theatre, and it was a random thing. And I divert into so many different things, because I can talk for Wales. You know, but the one thing that was happening at the time, and kind of relating back to what you asked me, Tom, is how you went into the X Factor, how you chose that, is because, you know, after the record label, there were some elements of regret that I was like, have I mucked up here? Have I fucked up by walking away from a major deal? But actually, you know, I've been with them for 2 years, but Booker was kind of like, in this industry, Jay, you live and die by your own sword. You know, you can do everything that you possibly can, but then in that scenario, if they don't, you're done. So you've got to try and take control in the best way that you possibly can. So I was kind of like, yeah, so I'm going to take control, and I'm going to guide where this is going to go. And so I ended up going out there. Vicky was pregnant at the time with our first child, Nova. And so things got a little bit tough financially. So we ended up moving back to Wales, which was, you know, I moved back in with my old man, and, you know, and just to ease the support of stuff. And I was traveling back and forth from the States, you know, paying for flights and stuff like that. But at the same time, working with the likes of the Jonas Brothers, pitching songs for Beyonce, you know, it was wild. And one thing that I was convinced that we were going to have a boy. And if we were going to have a boy, he was going to be called Otis, because I'm the biggest Otis Redding fan. Right. So, you know, there's like me working with Booker T, who'd written songs with Otis, like These Arms Are Mine and all this sort of stuff. And then I'm in the El Rey Theatre performing. I'm also just an absolute huge fan of Bill Withers. Right. So again, massive influence in me recording my album. Still Bill documentary just had the biggest impact on me as a musician, especially with things that I was going through at the time. And when you look at Bill's kind of background, he was in the military, he found music late, you know, and so I as stupid as it sounds, I saw like parallels to, you know what I mean? And then when you've got like, you know, me and Booker doing an interview with, you know, ridiculous Billboard magazine, and he's going, you know, like Bill, you know, Jay came from the military, and you know, he didn't know that this was going to be, and I'm like, what? I'm going to, you know, so anyway, I'm performing at the El Rey Theatre, and then he's asked me to do These Arms Are Mine, right, as well as the songs that we've written together. So I'm performing These Arms Are Mine on AXS TV, like national in the States, and I'm like, sod it, you know, do you know what, like, I'm going to say this because my wife is pregnant. She's 8 months pregnant, and we're going to have a baby. I think he's going to be a boy, and I'm going to call him Otis because of this song, because I'm such a huge fan. We ended up having a girl.
Of course you did.
Of Of
course you did.
We ended up having a giggle, but I walked off stage. I walked round to the front to watch the rest of the show, escorted by Mia Mayer, and Anthony Hamilton, walking back to the front of the stage. And the other way was Booker's manager and like this shadow, and it was Bill Withers. It was Bill Withers walking towards me, and I was like, what's going on? And he turned to me, he was like, hey man, you can really sing a little. And then like invited me back to his table. Like, and I was with him for about 15, 20 minutes, spinning the breeze about the military, the Navy, all while Booker was on stage. It was like one of the greatest nights of my life, you know. But again, those things like have an impact on how things set up. Not so much like by talking about it. That led on to me working and being looped in with the likes of like Justin Timberlake, and again writing for the likes of Beyonce and stuff, and subsequently certain things weren't coming off. So I'm out there going back over to the States, you know, every couple of months working, doing these things, working with all these big people who were saying these big things. At that moment in time, Sam Smith hadn't broken through. So with anything like Carl, you know, it's like, maybe as you will know, both of you, like, but the industry works in trends. You kind of know, oh, we need a boy band at the moment. Okay. Oh, here come the Wanted. Oh, well, actually, we need something else. Here come One Direction. Here, oh, we're going to overtake the Wanted because that's what the industry needs right now. After Adele, there was this big thing that was like, oh, amazing, right, cool. But have we got a male type Adele? Yeah. And so they were kind of like highlighting me, like if you look at early press and yeah, they were kind of going this male Winehouse, male Adele type thing early on. So like a couple of years later when they were really craving it, yeah, you've got the likes of those type of people, Timberland going, oh man, this is crazy. You know, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And then during the time that I'm waiting and getting frustrated and worrying about how I'm providing for my family, because I'm not getting paid during that time. Of course you're not. You know, this is all investment, really.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? I haven't got any cuts. I'm making money off of radio play from being on, you know, Booker's single and, you know, my advance and stuff. But, you know, I'm starting to worry, like, what's going to happen? What's going to go on? And, you know, eventually I started to get a bit frustrated by it all. Like the single that I'd wrote with the Jonas Brothers, that didn't end up coming out because they ended up breaking up. They released Pom Poms and ended up breaking up. So the album didn't see the light of day. The song that I wrote for Beyonce, Grow You With Love, she ended up touring with Kanye and Jay. And it was kind of like, actually, I'm going to change direction now. And instead of going down, you know, the halo and the fact that I've just had Blue Ivy, I'm going to now do you know, Drunk in Love and In the Club and all that sort of stuff, you know. So there's things like that, which then I was kind of like, oh, yeah, things don't happen the way that you hope that they do. Yeah. And then I ended up just thinking, do you know what, like, and the X Factor is something for years that I was really wary of, and as I'm sure lots of musicians were, like, what the hell is this? Like, you know, amateur comes on TV and then instantly a star. I was kind of a bit like, no, do your graph, man. Like, play every toilet in the land, try and work your way up. So there was that element I could feel of not bitterness, in honesty, bitterness of the success of people that were finding their fame overnight and then having careers. But then this transition started to happen for me. And that was that I saw the likes of, you know, the frustrations of not nearly just making it with, you know, the record, the major label, but then the people that I was working with at the time, and it not like waiting for it to happen, but the frustration of going, I need to take control again of what's happening here. Otherwise I'm going to, you know, fade, or it's not going to happen. And I'm going to, you know, so I took control and I ended up thinking, you know what, if James Arthur can be his original self on that show.
He was the one who kind of broke the mold with it a little bit, wasn't he? Where he went on and
totally did, man.
Was because they kind of like an artist, don't they? That they can see the potential, but then they can mold, even if they're already molded, but make it look like they've molded them. And James Arthur was the one who kind of went on and went, "This is how I'm going to do it," and they let it happen.
It was amazing, and again, I think it was a moment for them to almost feel like, you know, that's where we're going with it. And that's not to say anything about the winners of previous,
no,
because again, we all know how incredible some of those were. But for me, it was like, this musician who writes his own songs and has been trying to find his light is there. And then equally, you start to see the likes of Adele, Coldplay, Beyonce performing. And then you realize what they're doing is just using the show as a platform to sell their music and spread their thing. And then you go, am I going to turn into a bitter musician that didn't find success? Or am I going to try everything that I possibly can to find my light, to try and get my music out there, to try and push myself in the best possible way? So I can look back and go, well, I did everything, but it wasn't quite there. Or I did everything and I got a little bit of light. I got that little bit of light. And that had turned into maybe the philosophy, maybe the things that I'd picked up from the military. Attack the day. Do you know what I mean? Wake up, feel positively, look in every positivity. If something bad happens, what good happened from it and what can we take to it to move on? So that was me really. And then I ended up going in for the X Factor, and I kind of
Who
felt.
was in your year, Jay? Who was on there that the year?
So you had the likes of, Fleur East, who had a similar background to me. Had been around the industry for, near on a decade and hadn't quite found her light. Ben, Hey Now, you had Stevie Ritchie,
Right.
and people like that, Stereo Kicks, and so
So it was I remember the year. It was a big year for people that were on it, because a lot of people came off the back of it with careers, didn't they?
Yeah.
Whereas normally each season you might get one or two that continue. Whereas that particular year, there's still a lot of them that are around now.
It was one of those years where I think it reached like, I think 11 million or something like that. It reached the ratings of kind of what was like of old X Factor, and there was a genuine excitement about it. And for me, I suppose, with my story of being in the military and all of that sort of stuff, and I was really real about everything, and that's all I had to do. I felt that I needed to go on that show and really represent myself in the best way that I possibly could, and that was a story of someone who'd been in the military, found music, and was purely just trying to do a thing to find a career and make a career for myself and my family. And as kind of cliche as that sounds, that's the frustration with the X Factor, because it is a TV show. So immediately when you go on something like that, you've got people who are living real lives, affected by real issues and real problems, who are trying to find their light, but all of a sudden they're turned into caricatures of, because they need to be created like that in order, to create TV. In the same respect, Tom, as you'll know, with, acting and TV shows, you need to create situations where people can feel relevance and a connection to characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what happens with the X Factor, albeit from a positive and a negative way. So, I found myself getting a great deal of light at the beginning of the X Factor because of my story, because, the military angle, the fact that I was a dad, and I wasn't really ready for that. But I just knew that I had to be as real as I possibly could. So
I think people see you being real, and because it comes from a genuine place, then they invest.
Yeah.
Whereas I think it's really, what those shows do, again, not to sound like a about those shows, but they show the people that are real and that have grafted and done the work and really won it and really put their energy into being everything that they want to be. Here I am, this is what I am. And then the people that kind of go, yeah, I'm just here to be famous.
Yeah.
I think they do.
But I think you can see the difference between those two groups of
really
people.
Quick, that's what I'm saying.
Immediately.
Yeah.
When they come out, you go, I think it sounds cliche to say, but you can tell by the way it's in someone's eyes. Straight away you come out and you got the first thing they say, you can tell whether they are one of those groups of people, one of those two groups of people.
Not to blow smoke up your ass, but that's probably why people invested in you, because not the talent thing is kind of great, but also they see you, they buy you.
Yeah, I mean,
well,
and that's certainly one thing that I was really grateful for with the show. And again, it sounds cliche as hell, but it's like all of a sudden, one beautiful thing that happens with shows like that is you do go on that show and you do bare your soul. And whether they show certain things or not,
It's
And
all
of course they
in
don't.
the edit. It's
It's
all
all-
in the edit.
it's all
Everything,
in the
everything is, especially that show. It's all in the edit.
Of course, and it has to be, because you've got, you know, a limited amount of time in order to try and tell the story, paint the picture, and engage with not just you know, the 13-year-old or the 5-year-old, but also the 20-year-old dad or the 26-year-old mum or the nan, the granddad. It's a family show, so they're trying to connect with everybody. And I know that feels a little bit behind the curtain, and I hate to ruin it for everybody, but that's what makes great TV, and that's what makes great TV shows, to show people in all areas, that diversity, that everyone's being represented. And you know, and that's you know, that's what happens with TV, in good TV. And like it or loathe it, the X Factor for many years was good TV.
Thank you so much, Jay James, for joining us on the Awkward Turkey podcast. There is still so much that we've got to talk to you about, because we haven't even talked about the Overtones yet, and we're only just on the X Factor.
Insane. This guy's career is insane.
I know it is, and I want to make sure we get it all out there. So leave a comment on the video, like the video. If you're listening to it on iTunes, leave a review. It's really important. And we will see you next week, 7:00, ready to rock on the Awkward Turkey podcast. Love you, Carl. Drop the mic. Awkward Turkey.